From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex with your host Steve Urban comes the Riderflex Nation podcast, a show featuring entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. If you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have David Weaver, a franchise consultant with FranChoice, which provides a free franchise consulting service to individuals considering franchise ownership. David, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing fine. Thanks so much for calling into the Riderflex show. I appreciate it. So tell us about yourself. Let's just do some personal stuff first before we get into FranChoice. Where's David from? Give us some family information, all your darkest secrets.
It's I wish it were a more interesting story. I grew up in Indiana, and both my parents were entrepreneurs. I come from a multi-generational family business in the foundry business. So we made non-ferrous metal parts for the big three auto companies. So we made intake manifolds and water pumps and things like that.
Is this something your father started, or was it a generation even before that?
My great grandfather started in, I think, 1932.
Wow.
And how the business this is kind of my favorite part of that story. How the business got started was they lifted prohibition, I think, in 34.
Okay.
And they were, struggling through the Depression. And foundries make beer flow monitors so that they could tax alcohol.
I see.
That was the part that kind of got the foundry to go, because they were making them a lot. And so it incited prohibition, which is kind of interesting now that I think this whole marijuana thing is kind of lifting prohibition a second time around, right?
Yeah, it's happening all over again. Absolutely. So they, your family was from Michigan that's where they settled early on, your grandfather?
No, Indiana.
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 Okay. All right. Sounds good. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. You grew up and went to college. Give us that story real quick.
So, I grew up in Indiana, went to IU Business School. And then, in terms of, I have two sisters. I'm the middle child. I've got a sister on both sides.
Okay.
And
I bet that was fun.
Yeah. Being, I don't know, which is, having sisters or being the middle child, I don't know which is more.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That was kind of childhood. Went to business school at IU, did the corporate gig, realized that I didn't exactly fit in corporate America. It took me a couple of years to figure out that when you're in a corporate job and they ask you to move to another city, like that's the way up the ladder. And the first city they moved me to was Denver, and I love Denver. So I was like, I don't know why I would want to move to Cleveland.
Right.
And then I was asked to go to St. Louis, and I kind of was like, I don't know why I want to move to St. Louis. And so that was kind of my first indicator that maybe corporate America wasn't my path. And then I started going down the path of owning businesses.
Well, let me ask you this. When you went into corporate America after school and you got a regular job, now, did your dad still have a business? And was he saying, hey, listen, come help me?
Great question. Not really. So at this point, my great grandfather started it. My grandfather took over. He had 4 kids. So then he had 3 sons and a daughter. So the 3 sons kind of ran the foundry.
Okay.
And kind of growing up in that environment, all through high school, I didn't really want to take over the family business. I had a bunch of cousins, and so who's gonna, there's just too many kids.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds messy, possibly.
And then what happened is about towards the end of high school, General Motors forced a merger between our company and our largest competitor because we had all the same tooling.
Okay.
And that created the largest non-ferrous foundry in the country.
Okay.
And so that option just kind of went away.
I see. I was wondering what happened there. So you're in Denver then. You're moving through your career.
Yeah. And so I love Denver. And my dad comes to me. So they sold the family business, and my dad goes out and was looking at buying different businesses. He ended up buying a small non-ferrous foundry that made robotics parts in Detroit.
Okay.
This is late '90s, and
That's why.
so
That's why I thought you might be from Michigan. Sorry, I messed that up. But
no,
yeah.
that's okay. So I'm in Denver and feeling like I'm doing my thing. I got a good job and
Mm-hmm.
skiing a lot and had a bunch of friends. And my
Are you,
dad buys this company and then quickly realizes that maybe there was some seller non-disclosure going on and he didn't exactly understand some of the stuff that was going on. So he calls me up and he's like, I need somebody I can trust. Will you come back to Detroit and help me? And I was like, okay,
well, what were you doing for a living though? What was your profession at that time?
At that point, so came out of college. I worked for an elevator and escalator manufacturer, Montgomery Kone out of Illinois.
I see.
And then by this point in my career, I left the elevator business and got into more of a direct sales business. And we were selling interior design and decor fabrication for big box retailers, primarily grocery and drug chains like Kroger and City Market, things like that.
Okay. All right. And so he calls you.
So he says, hey, I need some help. I sold my house, packed up, moved to Detroit.
What? You moved to Detroit from Denver? Oh,
yeah, man. That was probably the first red flag that I didn't pay attention to.
By the way, nothing against Denver for anybody listening to the podcast that might live there. But okay, so go ahead. So
I basically have a sales job and I'm flying across the country. I was in an airplane 3 or 4 days a week. When I was a kid, I was like 26 to 28 doing that. And he asked me to come back to Detroit. So, I knew things about the foundry business and I had worked in the foundry as a kid in high school, primarily when I got in trouble. But I didn't know like manufacturing at all. So part of the reason I went back to help my dad, primary reason was he asked me to. Yeah. And he's my dad.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I recognized in my career that I've made this is probably hindsight, but I made career moves so that I could learn something I didn't know about. Right. So in the elevator business, that was a sales role, but primarily project management because I was on the new elevator and escalator part of it.
Okay.
Managing big projects. And then the decor thing was a hardcore sales job, like be in an airplane, be present, build a pipeline, all of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And this was all operations, right? So I get to Detroit and I was in shock a little bit. The foundry was not performing well. The industry took a big shift. The whole auto industry took a big shift at that same time period. So I was in Detroit from 2000 to 2004. And if you remember the Y2K bug, all the automation, right, was, and as we hit the year 2000, all the computer companies were afraid that the computers were going to shut down, if you remember.
I do remember. I do remember.
And so therefore all of the auto plants were run by robots. So all three automakers made huge inventories in 1997, 98, 99 in preparation for Y2K.
I remember that.
And then in 2000, nothing happened, right? Y2K was
made
up or whatever. It wasn't a problem. And then very shortly after that, so then everything shut down. All production slowed way down in 2000, which impacted our business dramatically. But then the towers came down in 11. And the economy hit the skids. And so we had like a double whammy within maybe 12 to 18 months. And so that period of time I call my real life MBA. So working for Dad in that foundry, it was a 4-year period of time. And I learned a lot in a hurry.
Tough times, but you probably, learned a ton. I mean, what great experiences. Yep.
Yeah. And so that really helped me in what I do now because I just can talk very directly about doing it, right? Like, we downsized our staff, we restructured everything, capital, our customer terms. It was quite a mess.
Well, valuable experience though that's helped you now. And so then what happened? You at some point you said, I'm done here and I'm moving back to Colorado.
So I learned a couple of things in the family business. So it was really my first attempt at a turnaround, and that was relatively successful. We got things turned around, working much more efficiently. I implemented ISO 9000 quality control process. We streamlined a bunch of real estate stuff that added cash flow into the
Mm,
business.
great.
And then essentially about 2.5 years into this, I had done kind of all of that heavy lifting. And I realized that I didn't want to live in Detroit. My son was born and my daughter was on the way. And I kind of had this epiphany and/or panic attack, whichever way you want to put it. I'm going to blink and my son's going to be graduating from high school.
Mm-hmm. That's
Which
right.
is interesting because he's 17 now. So,
Okay.
and that will mean that I will have lived like 20 or 30 years in Detroit. And that's where the panic attack was. I was like, I don't even want to live here. I want to live in Colorado and do the things that I was doing before.
Mm.
And I had learned the dynamic with the family and the family business was, the takeaway was cliches are made for a reason. Right. So don't get into business with friends and family, et cetera. So I learned a lot on that front of kind of what not to do. And so stabilized the business. Now it's about 2004. Economy's sort of picking up. Things are a little bit normalizing in the auto business. And I just went to Dad and said, look, I appreciate the opportunity. We got things squared away. I just really don't want to do this. I don't want to take over the company. I'm just going to move my family back to Colorado and raise my kids in the mountains.
Well, that must be
And,
that had to be a tough conversation for Dad emotionally. I'm just guessing because number one, he kind of wanted you there, and now he has grandchildren that you're about to move away from him. So that had to be a little bit tough.
yeah, that was what you would call a crucial conversation, and more importantly, it was a worse conversation or multiple conversations with my mother. She was not happy about that. So probably tying in the second piece.
Was your wife from Colorado or from there?
My wife at the time, she grew up in Chicago,
Okay.
I had met her in Denver.
Okay. You had met her in Denver. I didn't know if that was some of the pull to get you back. Okay. So, all right. So that was a tough conversation. And then did you land a job and then move back, or how'd you do that?
Well, if during that time, the economy still was not that great. And so I was talking to a bunch of headhunters and recruiters. And the advice that I had got is if you've got a good gig in Detroit, there aren't a whole lot of great jobs in Denver and nobody's paying any relocation fees and all that. So stay put. So I thought about that for a little bit, and maybe this is the entrepreneur in me, but I was like, why? No, I'm not going to say put. So I jumped in my car. I called up a couple of my buddies, and I jumped in my car and drove out there, drove to Denver, and I slept on their couch for a week.
Love it.
I had one interview with one company, and I had learned about a networking group, like a BNI group. It was similar to that.
Okay.
In those 5 days, I ended up having 17 interviews with CEOs or business owners or whatever, simply by going to those networking groups. So they weren't necessarily job interviews. My whole approach was, I live in Denver, or I live in Detroit. I want to come to Denver. Tell me about the economy, what's going on, who should I talk to? And I just kind of did that. So, in hindsight, that was pretty
great move.
It was a great trip.
Great move. Yeah, really good advice, by the way. Huge tip right there for the listeners. If people listening to the podcast, if you don't think networking events actually matter, especially when you're just trying to get some business cards and make some connections, I know a lot of people don't like doing it. In fact, I'm one of those, but it usually is a good idea, especially if you're trying to open some new doors. So I highly encourage it. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to emphasize, my messaging. So a Monday morning, I go to this networking group. I'd never done one. You stand up and you say, "My name is David Weaver," and whatever. I have this company, right?
Yeah.
So my story was, I live in Detroit. I've got 2 little kids, and I will be living in Denver by the end of the year. I need some help. And that was about it. I didn't say I want a job interview. This is my resume. I didn't do any of that. I just said I just want to meet people.
Great sales a great sales tactic. You pulled on their emotions, right? You pulled on their heartstrings there and just said, "Hey, I'm just being authentic. I'm just being real. I just need some help here." I love it.
Yeah, I guess in hindsight, I was just being true. I was just being honest. This is just what I'm trying to do, right?
Yeah, good move.
And I think that's also a good message even today. Like, networking works. Be authentic.
Yes.
And just be willing to tell people that you need some help, because people want to help other people all the time.
You're right.
One of the things I love about Denver is it's a very collaborative town. Right?
Sure is.
And if you ask for help, people are so willing to help you. So I cannot say the same thing for Detroit. And that's a very adversarial town in my opinion. But, just culture, right? It's just different culture.
Yeah. And did you want to be in sales and operation? You were always kind of a sales ops guy, right? So to speak, executive level, maybe some turnaround stuff. So were you looking in those areas, at that time?
At this point, I just needed a job because I had to move my family and
Right.
support my family. So, but I had way too much of the entrepreneurial bug. I was bitten hard. So I had no real intention on having a job for very long. I was trying to get out here, make the move, get stable, and do my own thing. So I ended up working for a non-bank lender. So one of the things that I hadn't done at this point was finance. I didn't really understand finance very well. I had learned it through the managing the business, but it was not something I was comfortable with. And one of the questions I had in trying to get these loans and restructuring our capital, why do some businesses get loans really easily and other businesses struggle like crazy to get a loan? Like nobody will talk to them. Right? So that was my big sort of what I wanted to learn. And in my mind, I was going to work there for 12 to 18 months and I'm out of it. Right. 6.5, 7 years later, I had kind of started my own business at that point, but I was there for 6+ years.
Gotcha.
Really just business development guy for a small business loan kind of company.
But that's when cool. but then you were dealing with entrepreneurs and business owners and helping them figure out how to get funded or get a loan. And so you're just more and more experience at talking to early stage companies or people trying to get businesses off the ground at that point, just more experience at that, I'm assuming.
Exactly. I mean, basically what I did is talk to small business owners of all kinds. So it was very interesting to me because I got to talk to people that did all kinds of different businesses. Mm-hmm. And I was super interested I didn't know you could make that much money doing that thing, whatever that thing was.
Right.
And so that really was interesting. I did all kinds of different deals. I did a lot of over the trucks and trailers. I was kind of the franchise guy. That's how I got into the franchise business. So I knew a lot of franchisees. A lot of franchisors, helped a lot of franchise owners get going. So I learned kind of that startup capital thing, which is different than getting traditional loans. But it was fun. I mean, I did cattle deals and crazy stuff like that. So it was pretty interesting. But financial meltdown of 2008, 2009 put the brakes on that entire business. And our bank ended up pulling the line for the finance company because I had been successful with franchisees. So our portfolio was lopsided with too many businesses under 2 years old.
I see.
And banks don't like that.
I see.
So I'm out of the franchise business. I didn't lose my job, but it was very clear that we weren't going to lend for probably a year. Like we were scaling things way, way back, and that just wasn't going to work for me. So, so I just decided I decided that I could do pretty much anything and make this kind of money. So I just went out and started looking at businesses to buy. I knew a bunch of bankers, all the big banks, Chase and Key and all of those. Yep. And so I started talking to the asset management folks because everybody had portfolios with underperforming loans, right? So what businesses are in those underperforming loans that I might be able to restructure and figure that out. I went to angel investors. I went to private equity. And what is the game with that, right? How much equity do you give up and what's the debt structure, et cetera?
Okay.
And I was looking at $10 million deals and $50,000 deals, right?
And now let me ask you, as you're looking for a business to buy right in here, had you made a bunch of money working that regular job and you had saved up a ton to where you could take 12 months off while you're trying to buy this company? Or are you in a situation where you're like, okay, holy crap, like this other deal is, this is kind of stopping. I don't have any income coming in. I'm trying to buy something, but I don't really have the money to buy it, but I got to figure out where to find some cash to buy it. Like talk to me about some of those details. The reason I want to dive in there is because I think there are a lot of people in that situation, right? They either lost a job or they're in their 40s or 50s and they want to buy something, but they don't have $1 million in the bank to just buy the business, and they have no idea how to go get the cash. And I think a lot of people are also asking themselves, like, well, how the heck do I pay my mortgage while I'm doing that? Because, walk us through that time in your life. I just want to know how you made that work.
Oh man, this is the this may be getting a little bit personal. So the reason I laughed so hard when you said that is I wish I would have planned better. And now in hindsight, I kind of think that people thinking about getting into business, it's a little bit like, when are you going to start saving in your 401k? When are you going to buy your first house? And when are you going to have kids? It just kind of happens, right? And then you figure it out afterwards, to a certain degree. So my story is this: the financial meltdown happens, really impacts our business. At the same time, marriage number one was blowing up, and
So personal income is dropping, and personal life is a little bit in shambles all at the same time.
Yes, let's just say liquidity and net worth went away quickly, between attorneys and everything else.
Boy.
I was at this crossroads, right? I'm not going to stay in banking because the safe thing to do is to go get a job with Wells Fargo, and that just gave me heartburn. So I'm just thinking about that, and I really just was like, I've been wanting to own my own business since I went to go help Dad, and why don't I just, like, it's time to do it. And so at the same time, so how did I get into franchise consulting? I'm looking at all these different businesses to buy. Banks were not lending. I didn't have a whole lot of liquidity. What I did have kind of went away. What I kind of forgot about this. I did have a friend that I knew that was in the franchise space. He was a food guy. He owned multiple different restaurants. He came to me and he's like, we can buy this bar on DU's campus on a seller carry and whatever. And so I bought in 50% to this bar on DU's campus.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Right. So you
yeah,
so when you finally did step out and bought something, you bought something that has a 90% failure rate.
So I learned a lot about that. Yes, and I started the franchise consulting within a month of one another. So I did both.
I see. Okay. All right.
And I just decided I was gonna make one of these two things work. And and at the same time, I was also kind of doing loans through brokers and stuff. Like, I had lending, so I was feathering a little bit, I guess, trying to figure out what was going to come to the surface.
And when you say you started the franchise business, it was franchise consulting on your own. Was that just you, or what was that?
Yeah, the franchise consulting is really not a whole lot different than your business, right? As an executive recruiter. So I think of my role as a franchise consultant very similar to an executive recruiter. I help people in career transition think about franchising as an alternative to staying in whatever vertical or segment that they're in, right? And so I spend a lot of my time educating people on my experiences and things that I've done as franchise investments and or owning different businesses, but really painting the picture for, this is what it looks like to be a business owner. This is how much it's going to cost. This is reality. Like, you can go on the internet and find all you want about franchises. There's 3,800 franchises for sale in the U.S. right now.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's noise, right? I have an inventory of about 200 different brands. That's a lot of brands. So there are just not, there's a lot of choice out there, but there's not a lot of quality. And so how do you know what the difference is? And what are the things that you want to be asking of the franchisor and franchisees so that you understand the business model you're getting into, the relationship with the franchisor, but also the mindset of a business owner is different, right, than a corporate executive. And
it sure is.
Are you ready for that, right?
Yeah,
and this is what it looks like, and let's talk about what that might be like, right, and et cetera. So, I find the consulting a total blast. I'll do this until I'm too old to pick up the phone. I mean,
but when you first started doing it, was it just you on your own, or did you join FranChoice right then? How did that work?
That's a good clarification. So there's probably FranChoice is a national organization of franchise consultants. It's not a franchise; it's a license agreement. But for most people, there's not a big difference.
Okay.
And then we've got 2 or 3 other competing franchise consulting networks out there. but Franchise is the premier franchise consulting network, and there's a couple of other ones that have some pretty solid franchise consultants in them. So,
Okay.
so that's how I got into franchise. I look at franchise as the platform
I
for
see.
my consulting business.
I
It's
see.
the structure,
Gotcha.
and then in addition to franchise, I also invest in franchise assets and real estate. So that's kind of my business is franchise consulting and investing in businesses and real estate.
I bet you find it fascinating to visit with, let's say, I don't know, somebody was a dentist for 20 years and he calls you and says, I want to buy a business, right? I want to buy a restaurant, or I want to buy a daycare, or whatever. I bet you find it fascinating when you have these early conversations with them, because they really just have no idea probably what they're getting into. I'm just guessing.
Absolutely. Yeah. The first question I ask anybody that I talk to for the first time is, what are you trying to accomplish by owning a business? Or if you're if you're a successful business owner, I would say probably 25% of my business is helping successful entrepreneurs that are kind of bored, or they figured it out and their business is stable. Like, let's start a second business. Well, a franchise makes a lot of sense because all the heavy lifting has been done, systems and process, et cetera.
Right.
And so they can step in there and do things and focus on things like sales and employees, building team, because that's the core of the business, rather than things like building a website and developing product strategy and all that kind of stuff, right? So franchising makes sense, but the core of my business is probably that transitioning corporate executive.
You mentioned earlier executives, somebody that's been a VP for a Fortune 500 company for 20 years, but they've never owned a business. I mean, there's just so many things that are different, right? Like you said, the mindset of a business owner is completely different than a lifelong VP level executive for a Fortune 500 company.
I would say yes. So many things are different. Mindset is definitely needs to be tweaked a little bit, but you'd be surprised at how much is transferable, right? And so I think that's what gets people's juice going, is they start recognizing what they've been good at and what served them in the corporate world. And there's so many things that translate very directly, right? The things that don't translate that are very different is what's your mindset about money? Are you comfortable losing money for 9 months to 12 months? Because that's what it really looks like. How comfortable is your wife in investing a big chunk of money? Because we're talking $200,000 to $400,000, right?
Right.
And of that, you need maybe $100,000 to $150,000 in cash. That's big money to a lot of people. I don't care how high up you go in the
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep, to most people.
So you're going to put that money out there. You're going to start this business, and you're not going to take a salary for 12 months. Now, how do you feel?
Okay, yeah, most people are like, yeah, I'm out. That's right. Never mind.
So, and that's why I say it like that, because if you're out, if that scares you, that's fine. That just means you're a corporate executive. If it fuels you, that means that you might be entrepreneurial enough to want to do this. And then I get to focus on the people that really want to do it, and they start leaning in and getting excited, and that's where it starts to get pretty fun.
What if they don't have the funds? What if you meet let's call it an operations executive, somebody that was a VP of ops, and maybe they were a COO for $100 million company for 5 or 6 years, great leadership experience, wonderful references, great track record, but they don't have the 200 grand in the bank. But you meet them and you're thinking, gosh, this person could definitely be an awesome franchisee. How can I help them? What do you do with that person?
Well, as part of my service, one of the things that I do is connect them with franchise-specific lending companies. So I've got relationships with 4 companies that are national brands that work with all kinds of different on the finance side, right? So they will have a stable of 100 banks.
Okay.
And some banks like to do food deals, and some banks like to do fitness deals, and some banks like to do service-based companies. So they kind of help them direct traffic. So that's kind of answer number one is, I'm going to give you the resources so that you can figure out for yourself, does this make sense for you financially, right?
Good.
And then, but in terms of all franchisors have minimum net worth and liquidity requirements.
Okay.
So you kind of have to come to the table with enough because they sort of know. So for example, if you're looking at a fixed retail franchise, most of them need about 500 to 750 net worth to do a fixed retail franchise. Now the FDD might say more like 250. The reason it's so high is that's what the retail landlords are going to require. So in order to get a good spot, the landlords have upped their net worth requirements, and so that's the reason. So that's kind of the threshold, and then if they have that, we can get them financed.
Now, you're gonna have to educate me on this because I don't know, but the percentage of the population that has a positive net worth of 500 to 700,000 is probably pretty small, isn't it? I don't know. Help me out there.
Maybe I could answer it this way. My core customer is a director level and above executive.
Okay.
That is probably 45 to 55 years old. And so the reason for that, in my opinion, is they've had enough corporate experience where they have the confidence that they know what they're doing, right? So they've hired and fired people. They've been in multiple positions where they've had P&L responsibility. They know how businesses work, not just necessarily their core business. And so, I work with people all over the board, CFO types, operations and engineers, as well as salespeople. So it really comes down to business experience and also life experience and net worth and liquidity position. So,
Okay. What's your biggest win so far? Like, have you, and I'm guessing, so you get paid by, not by the franchisee, but by the franchisor, right?
Correct. Just like an executive recruiter, the company pays me for my consulting time.
So tell us about a huge win where you got some former executive to buy 30 locations in a franchise or something. What's your Super Bowl moment so far?
To be honest with you, that's I guess a typical assumption. I have done big deals, and big deals are fun. I would say my biggest win is the successful turnaround of the Elements business that we bought. So we purchased a couple locations, underperforming locations. The game plan was to own them for 3 to 5 years and kind of turn them around and flip them, sell them again. We owned those locations for
Who's we?
months.
Who's we?
Me and my wife. My wife did all
right.
the
All right.
So she gets all the credit. I just kind of looked at the deal and did oversight. Why that was a big win is we set out a plan. We mapped it out, we operated to the plan, and it worked just like it was supposed to. So that's something that I'm more proud of than getting a deal done. In terms of helping somebody get into business, one of the things I'm most proud of, because it was really hard, I had a friend of a friend that introduced me to some guy's nephew that lived in Normandy, France, so outside of Paris.
Okay.
And he was just hell-bent that he was going to move his wife to the U.S., and they wanted to live in Naples, Florida. And I found them a franchise that was for sale in Naples, Florida. So I helped them move from France, their whole family from France to Florida.
Nice.
And the E2 visa process and all of that. So that was a pretty big win.
That's nice. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Plus you helped them move to a pretty cool place, right? Naples is a very nice area. I've been there many times. How about this? How about the time that Bobby called you and said, "Holy crap, man! This franchise sucks. I can't believe you talked me into buying this." No, I'm just joking. I don't know. I don't know if that's actually happened, but I'm guessing there's been a few times where people got into something and it just didn't work for them, and then you're probably like, talk to us.
Yeah, there's a couple. People are funny, right? Here's another takeaway from my time in Detroit. People are funny about money is a little saying that I pulled out. As soon as you get money involved, people do weird things.
You got that right.
So part of my process, and probably what I'm not as good at as I'd like to, is I follow up with people 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road. I want to see how they're doing. It's important to me that they're successful, right? So, and I love calling them up and checking things out and tell me how it's going. Tell me the good and the bad, right? Because franchising,
Especially if you're going to be pitching that same franchise to somebody else, you need to know, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look, if it didn't go well, tell me why.
Yes.
And is it because you're not a good fit, whatever. So
Hmm.
so I have had lots of conversations like, this isn't what I expected and I hate it. Um, and then I say, tell me, is what I'm looking for, tell me why and tell me what, right? But some of it is I hate sales, which is, if you can't get your business off the ground with sales, it's going to be hard no matter what you
Yeah.
do. What I'm looking for is that operator issues and typical being a business owner. Sales are hard. Employees are
They're
hard
hard.
to manage, right?
Yes.
That's just business. So that's part of it. Or is it the franchisor is not delivering on their promise? They're not
Mm.
supporting me. The training wasn't effective. So if that stuff shows up,
Right.
that's when I really get my radar up and I start paying attention.
Yeah.
Right.
I bet you've had some tough conversations, right? With the
Oh
franchise,
yeah.
right? Yeah. I'm guessing you've called them up and said, Hey man, you're selling this dream and, it's not quite what you're pitching.
Yes, and part of the benefit of being in the finance business is I saw a lot of that. I really could identify
Good.
the franchisors that have happy, successful franchisees that are have a great life, and the franchisors that are dealing with legal problems because everybody's suing them. And
Mm.
so
Right.
there's some very fundamental cultural differences between those two organizations. And it doesn't matter what the wrapper is or the franchise brand is, right?
Hmm.
It's the philosophy of franchising. Some people have one philosophy and other people have the other. Um, the one that you want is the franchisor that wants to grow through the growing their royalties. Because if they grow their royalties and they want to live, the franchisor wants to live on the royalties,
Hmm.
then the franchisees have to grow their business and be successful. The other franchisor grows by selling franchises, and
I
that's the
see.
one you want to stay away from, right?
Oh,
Because
that is a great tip right there for the listeners. Okay. Very good. Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
and so and there's a lot of telltale signs that you can just kind of know just because I've been in the business for a long
Hmm.
time
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
The reason I said people are funny about money, so I've had these follow up calls, right, with multiple different people.
Right.
And I would say I've been doing this for a long time, and I can think of maybe 2 or 3 people. One guy bought the rights to develop 3 stores, right? So that franchise fee is like 6 figures. So he
Okay.
spent 6 figures to the franchisor to open these stores. And I call them, fixed retail takes about 6 months to a year to get your store open. So 12 to 18 months in there, you're open for 6 months, right? So I call them up. How's it going? Haven't opened a store yet. Why
Ooh.
not?
Ooh.
Well, because the franchisor, we can't agree on real estate. And I was like, why? And he's like, they want me to have my store 30 minutes from my house. And this guy's in San Francisco. So 30 minutes is like, what, 10 miles? I mean, with traffic and whatever. Uh,
Wasn't that disclosed in the what is it called? The franchise disclosure or something? I don't know. I mean, didn't he know
yeah, the
about the 30
franchise
minutes?
disclosure document.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I call him up and I'm like, how's it going? He says, no, it's not going well. I'm not going to do it. So, but what else do you have? I was like, wait a second. You bought 3 locations of this brand and you've decided without even trying to open a store that you don't want to do the franchise, but you're also interested in buying a different franchise.
Wow.
So you're going to just kiss off the 100 grand.
Wow.
The answer was yes. And he bought the second group of franchises. He bought multiple locations of a different brand.
Well, must be nice to just have 100 grand to burn.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. And so
Wow.
that's super funny.
You've been around a ton of well, first of all, you're an entrepreneur yourself. Your dad was an entrepreneur, your grandfather. You've been around a ton of entrepreneurs. So lots of business owners. What advice would you give an executive right now today that's thinking about stepping away from that cushy W-2 job and starting their own business? What are some things you'd tell that person?
Um, if they really have a drive that they've always wanted to own a business and they've been thinking about it but haven't really done anything about it,
Mm-hmm.
that guy I would say start sooner than later. Like I wish I would have done this a decade sooner. I
Yeah.
wish I would have come back from the foundry experience and figured out how to start a business right out of the gate. So the first couple of years are always going to be hard, but once you get beyond, what I call business maturity, where the business stabilizes and you can kind of understand how things roll, there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. From self-confidence and cash flow and the ability to support your family. It is the absolute best.
Now, do you believe they have to go all in? Do you encourage people to say, hey, push all your chips to the table, cash in your 401k, mortgage your house, do whatever you have to do? Or do you believe in, maybe you start something on the side? What's your philosophy there?
That is a very interesting question. Last week I had a conversation with a guy that now I'm going to talk to again next week, because as part of my process, people fill out a questionnaire and give me some information so that we can talk about it. And this guy, very successful sales career, had a little bit of bump with real estate. He owned a couple of rental properties in the financial meltdown in 2008 to 2010 timeframe, and ended up giving those back, right? So he's rebuilding his net worth and cash position, et cetera. But he's motivated. This is what I want to do. I've always wanted to do it. Find me the right thing and I'm going to do it. Okay. And I had a conversation with him. I said, you're too light. I need you to recognize, for something that you could be successful in, this is all in. And are you okay with that? Oh yeah. Is your wife okay with it? She's fine. She'll do whatever I tell her. Right? Okay. I don't believe it, or whatever. But I'm not comfortable with helping people that are all in, right? Like, you have to push and push. So I said, I'll introduce you to the franchise finance folks. You go through their program and they'll determine for us both what's a reasonable investment for you. What's something you can do without getting too far over your skis. Cause I'm not a big fan.
Do you try to meet with the spouse or the partner of your target client? I mean, do you try to say, hey, listen, I want to talk to your husband, or I want to talk to, do you try to get them in the living room and like, hey, let's just have a real conversation here. I need to know that you're on board.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes they're not interested, sometimes, but if the wife is not on board, if the spouse, it doesn't matter. I talk to as many women as I do men.
Yeah.
If the spouse is not supportive, they're not going to be supportive 12 months into owning the business.
That's right.
It's going to be really challenging. So that's so important. The other thing that you made me think of is, this happens more frequently. I want to go into business with my friend that I know from work, right? We've known each other. We've worked side by side for 14 years. We're going to be business partners. And the very first thing I say is, that's fine. Partnerships create complexity. So let's just understand what that looks like. But one thing I want you to be super clear about is, you're going into business with his wife, and
that's right.
He's going into business with your wife. That's you right. have a 4-way partnership, whether you believe it or not.
That's correct.
So, and then I talk about people are funny about money, right? So now you've got 4 people that might get weird about, yeah, we lost money for 6 months or 9 months. That was the plan. Well, some people aren't comfortable losing money for almost a whole year, right? As part of the plan. So it's harder to get put together when there's that many cooks in the kitchen.
And by the way, on that topic, I really encourage people, make sure your operating agreement, make sure all your ducks are in a row, setting up the business properly, especially with a partner or whatever. It's actually when the company starts making money that things can get messy.
Steve, you are so right. I always tell people get weird about money in 2 places. When you're losing a lot of money, people get really weird. Yep. And when you're making a lot of money, people get really weird.
That's right.
That's just true. It's just what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. On this podcast, just switching gears just a little bit, we give a lot of career advice, but we also give a lot of job interviewing advice. You've had lots of employees, you've interviewed, hired, fired, all these things. In today's world, so to speak, what common mistakes do you see people make when they're looking for a job or interviewing for a job? And what advice would you give them?
Just as a caveat, the people that I have hired and fired have been foundry workers and franchisee type of employees. So I don't know how applicable this is to an executive interview, but one of the things that comes across as a pretty loud red flag and is pretty obvious to the interviewer is when the answers come back that are obvious that they're answering to what you want to hear and not necessarily telling you what their true experience, right? So to me, it's more of an integrity thing than anything else. Like what I'm looking for in an interview is much less skills and abilities and matching talent with what we need to get done, and it's more integrity, work ethic, value system. Is all of that stuff in alignment? Because I know that I can train skills and abilities, but I can't train work ethic.
I love it. You're probably looking for the same things a lot of times when you're interviewing people that want to buy a franchise. I'm guessing you're trying to figure out whether or not they're authentic, right, so to speak.
Oh man, oh yeah, and the one thing that I find a lot and push back on is franchising is the easy button, right? So franchisor is going to do everything. It'll be pretty easy. The salesperson's telling me it's semi-absentee. I'll hire a manager. Man, if you're not ready to work, just keep your day job. Okay? And if you think your day job is hard, it's probably not as hard as trying to own the business, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, everybody I've ever talked to, and including my own experiences, I always tell people it's easy to have a regular W-2 job. Trust me, that's easy. If you want to be on cruise control, just go get a regular job. You want a challenge, try to start a business. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yes.
So in wrapping up, David, I just want to ask a couple more questions. So first of all, congratulations on, the things you accomplished early in your own personal career and helping your family business. And then you went through some personal trials and you pushed through that and you ended up, being a business owner, and now you help people own businesses, which has got to be very rewarding. So an awesome, career overall so far. When you think back now, though, when you look back on your life, if you could call your 21-year-old self and give that young man some advice, what would you tell him?
Start sooner.
Start sooner.
Yeah, start sooner. I was that guy that I have to have a job first and get some experience and then, get married and have kids and like all these excuses. If you want something in your life, put it in your life. That's what I would say. Put it in your life and make it a priority, because, life happens and it happens pretty quick, right?
It happens pretty fast. You said something earlier that I think was really great. At some point you said, I want to live in Colorado. So I don't know what the heck I'm going to do when I get there, but I'm going to get there and then I'm going to figure it out. And I think, I think that's really good advice. People, I think they're always waiting for certain things to happen to allow them to get to the place they want to go. No. I really encourage people to go get to where you want to be and then figure it out from there. And I think your life will be happier. I loved it when you said that earlier.
Thank you.
So what is David's core purpose now in life when he wakes up? If you had to define your core purpose in a sentence or two.
One of the things I'm pretty passionate about, and I would say that this would fit your question. I love that I get to help create business owners. I'm a big fan of small business ownership. I grew up in a pretty big company. I like small companies. I like, the 10 to 20 employees. I like the very hands-on direct access to the customer and being part of the community and things like that. And so I think that my purpose is creating other business owners that get to impact their customers and their employees and their communities through the value that they deliver through their business, right? So what do I mean by that? I think that business owners have the opportunity to impact a lot of people. And so that could be through your customers and your service that you're, through the product or service that you're offering. But one of the things I learned at the Foundry and through Elements, we helped probably 4 or 5 massage therapists buy a decent car. Like they didn't have, parents that helped them and whatever. And, they were coming late to work and whatever. They had a car every 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine's an auto broker. And I was like, Sean, set these guys up, get them a car that's $2,000, $3,000 and make it a good one so that they'll keep it for 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And then we would help them buy it if we needed to and deduct their paycheck or whatever. So that's the kind of helping somebody have a car is not the point.
Nope.
Giving somebody stability so that they're not always managing chaos is the impact. And that to me is where all the juice is at. That's why things matter. And so my purpose, helping create business owners that make a bigger impact in their local community.
I love it. And you're right. It's hard for people that haven't owned a business to understand, but when you create something and you create a business, a product or a service that all of a sudden is supporting the employees and the families that they have, it is a big time emotional thing for a business owner. I mean, you're thinking to yourself, wow, I've created this product or this service and that's cool, but I'm also affecting these lives. Like Sally's, son is going to go to CU next semester. And I know that that's because she's working in our brand and I'm helping support that. I mean, it's powerful. It really is. It's special to have that as a business owner. So how do we David, if somebody is listening and they want to buy a franchise or they just want to ask you some questions, it's free, right? It's free. It's a free consultation or a free visit with you. They don't have to worry about putting up a bunch of money just to get started with the conversation. How do they contact you? What's the best way?
Email is dweaver at franchoice.com.
Okay.
My phone number is 303-933-0890. Franchoice.com/dweaver is my franchise website, and franchiseyourfreedom.com is my personal website.
Awesome. Well, listen, if there's a deal out there where I can buy a business that's doing $5 million a year, but I don't have to put up any cash and all I got to do is sign some papers, will you call me first?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to talk with you. And look, I love talking about this. So I talk to anybody about small business, no matter what they want to do.
Yeah, I appreciate it, David. Thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast. I appreciate it. Look forward to getting to know you more, and good luck in your business as things continue. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Riderflex Nation podcast can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on our podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day.